Imagine him, folks, with his pale face, his big open mouth, his blank white eyes, a face you never hope to see in your life, not to mention his almost dead skin clinging to his bones and his incredibly long limbs, inside his prison, sitting, covering his face, crying and moaning alone, crying as if he had lived horrors terrible for those who knew any facts about 096. Mostly all of them will have a feeling of terror, horror mixed with sadness and grief for this entity. That this entity with a simple mistake can kill every human on this planet and nothing will stop it, but it doesn't do this because it's bad or there's evil in it. If so, then why do you see it crying and covering its face all the time? It's not just you who asked that question. Guys, I spent hours of research and I uploaded to you how many videos in the channel to reveal the truth and origins of this entity. What makes this entity the most dangerous entity in the age, in Euclid, and he can bring about the end of the world? Why is this entity tearing? Anyone looking? And why is this happening, regardless of everything we guys have seen before in the channel on this subject? In this video we will see one of the most important files of the organization from Dr. Bob's channel, if not the most important file that reveals to us the full truth of what happened and created what we know as 096, known as the Shy Man or T-Guy. Brace yourselves, community of goodness, because the story behind this truth, as much as it is terrifying and bloody, is considered one of the most sad and painful. I wanted, guys, before we dive into the video, to thank all the gang that joined the channel. This really brings together very motivating, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. It all started in a small hut in a small village in Nepal, just a few kilometers from the Chinese border, where there is the summit of Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, which represents a great challenge for every adventurous climber who has courage and perseverance. This was one of the dreams of explorer and adventurer Andrew Irvine, who was sitting in one of the cozy corners of the cottage enjoying a bowl of lamb broth, and with it a glass of chong, which is a popular drink in that area. As evident from his adventurer's nickname Andrew, he had come a long way to get to this place. The inhabitants of that village in the hut were giving him some looks that indicated lack of exercise. They have seen many like him smiling enthusiastically, full of confidence that they are among the elite few who will survive reaching the summit of Everest, many of whom are still frozen at the top of the mountain. One of the residents should have spoken to him, and this is what an elderly man who speaks only a little English did: encourage and see in front of Andrew, and tell him that whatever he thinks he'll find at the top of the mountain, honor, glory, gratitude, whatever, he had better go look for it elsewhere, because only death in the snow awaits him there. Andrew, a young and enthusiastic adventurer full of confidence, answers him that death awaits only those who have not worked hard enough and have not prepared themselves properly. He goes on to say that he has climbed other mountains before in different parts of the world. The Everest seal doesn't scare him, it's just a challenge. The old man will get through it. He has lost hope that he can influence Andrew. He is too arrogant to take his advice. He looked at him and said that everything has become confidence and pomp these days. But tell me, what will you say or do when you meet the king there? According to Andrew Dannon, the king is the mountain itself. He smiled and replied to the old man, "Don't worry when I meet him, so I will take his crown from him." The old man had nothing left but to leave Andrew's table after failing to try to. Something of this adventurer's fate, her conscience now would be at ease at least. The adventurer Andrew, who did not care for anything that was said to him, and for the looks of the inhabitants of the area that it was his dish of lamb broth, and went to the room he rented upstairs, was full of enthusiasm because tomorrow is the day promised every month of his training. It will finally show its effectiveness. He'll climb Everest. The achievement of his life would be an achievement. He's not ready to forget it, even if he wanted to. The next day, Andrew climbed the mountain towards the top. The weather was very difficult, and he is at a height of approximately 2,000 meters, and every meter he climbs is more difficult than the one before. The cold was very severe, causing unbearable pain, but this does not matter Andrew Kandro very much. He remembers the old man's words that death awaits him. The adventurer Andrew has never felt alive and vital, as he now feels as he continues and climbs further, as he tries to control his breathing and searches with his frozen hands under the glove. On any point he can lean on to pull himself. All this needs stamina. A normal person can't bear it. But Andrew was equipped and trained for all this. No room for error where he is. One wrong step and he will end up hard frozen somewhere on this mountain. Since this place is so dangerous, the bodies of the adventurers who died here are never recovered, as their grandmothers who could spot them because of the colorful climbing clothes they wore fill the mountain. Some consider these bodies a warning sign of what awaits them there. Others, more arrogant, consider them references that indicate that they are on the right path. Andrew climbs for another few hours, ignoring his most pain, trying to push his limits until he reached a considerable height, where he found shelter. So he set up a sagar camp and began to eat some of his food savings. To his credit, the shelter he found did not pass through the blizzard, which helped him sleep without being exposed to the deadly cold. Tomorrow was a more difficult day for him than this. As he tries to sleep, he races his head to the top of the mountain that appeared to him. For the first time he sees it as greater and bigger than ever he has seen it before, as he begins to wonder, will he make it to the top or will he die? But as he closes his eyes to sleep, guys, he never thought about the possibility that just might be worse than death. In the days after, Andrew climbed the mountain so much that he exceeded the height imposed by biology. A man should not overstep it. It was impossible to break his fork. He had been through too much to stop. Here there is no room for surrender. Otherwise everything he has done will have no meaning and he will be a failure like most people who live on this planet. His life would not be hers. He will leave no legacy after his death, and that is what terrifies him more than his death in this place. Finally, after a great struggle to reach an area of 8,000 Timbats known as the Dead Zone or Death Zone, a zone where it is classified as inhospitable, where breathing is almost impossible, Andrew was able to see the corpses that are considered a reference to continue on the way up and understand that he only has 1,000 Parnassas left to reach the summit. He is now one last step away from conquering the summit, and at this moment Andrew is surprised when he sees another climber in front of him coming down from the top and advancing towards him in a strange way of walking. This person was wearing a traditional white climbing suit. Andrew could only see the features of his face, it seems, glasses he wears. The moment Andrew laid his eyes on the stranger's glasses, he began to feel a comfortable feeling, a feeling of pinching cold. The icy wind he was feeling disappeared. He began to feel the opposite, and rest, sportiness, reassurance, just as if sitting in front of a warm fire in a cozy, otherwise safe cottage. Andrew would have welcomed all these beautiful feelings, but a skilled and experienced adventurer like Andrew knows very well that this feeling is one of the worst things that can happen to you in a place like this. It is the indicator that death is taking you, and your body accepts it, even if this unknown is what generates these feelings. If one thing is certain, it really is. Very right. When Andrew deduced all this, he tried to retreat and flee, but he realized he couldn't, as if he was frozen in place. Andrew focused more on the stranger's glasses to notice something emanating from him like hot embers of a light orange color. Andrew wondered, are those eyes? Yeah, it's the eyes of this John Doe. Andrew, he's starting to feel it. More horrific look. He was so terrified by the look of this unknown, or rather this thing. And yes, that's not human, it's something else, but his. A human uttered this thing, and Andrew asked, why are you here? You want to challenge me? Andrew, he was powerless to say a word, and he felt the pain of the cold as if it had doubled, and the pain increased even more, the longer this thing stares at him. And yet Andrew was able to speak up and ask this thing, what are you? To make this thing laugh, and tell him I'm the king of the mountain. This thing, folks, is known to the organization as a 1529, and it's the worst thing that can happen to anyone trying to climb. Andrew begins to recall his conversation with the old man in the cottage when he told him, what will you say when you meet the king? He replied that he would remove the crown from his head, and now he was before the king, and in a state of terror and panic, Andrew only began to cry and beg the king's pity. Please have mercy on me. I just wanted to practice climbing. The owner of the mountain burst out laughing and told him, if you will climb and keep climbing, you will not stop climbing. The king, folks, had an impact. Andrew, to do what you will now see." With a mere shake of the king's head, Andrew found himself hanging on the edge of the mountain from which only his hands had come to bear his hanging body, as if he had returned to the moment when he had reached this height, and with the increase of terror which possesses him, and the extreme coldness which causes him unbearable pain, and at the same time, he felt the dreadful gaze of the king upon him with frowning eyes which terror enters the soul and from which only absolute evil flows. Andrew struggled to pull himself from the ledge, and when he finally arrived and wanted to relieve his limbs from climbing, not a moment passed. The king shook his head again to find Andrew himself again hanging on the edge. The extreme cold and the unbearable load on the muscles of his body as he clings to the edge is the worst torment a man can experience, and the worst and terrifying that this torment does not end, because folks, it's been Andrew days, weeks, months, years. He lives this matter without the king letting him die, and this is despite everything: hunger, thirst, fatigue. Even Andrew's will to let himself fall to die and rest was taken away from him, as if the king kept him alive to live hell on the corners, a game he has been playing with all this year. Andrew's body, stripped of the ability to die, began the environment, and the hell he's living in changes shape at first due to the constant stress and terror he's living. He began to lose his hair. His face and skin became pale from lack of sleep. His body became more and more these because he was deprived of any nutrition. Because of the non-stop climbing, his limbs began to stretch. All this, and the Mountain King is still staring at him with those looks. Other years passed, and one day in which Andrew climbs the ledge, and in his reaction, which he does every time, he hides his face and weeps and shrinks, and the king begs to end this torment of appearances, that this was the owner feeling more pleasure this time. The owner answered him, "You wanted to climb, you wanted this hobby to be what would make you better than all human beings, but now you are not worth anything. Our adventure ends here, and we got bored of playing together." After these words, the king departed. Andrew couldn't believe he got rid of. Alone in this place in the death zone, finally, after what he thought was an eternal hell, he was able to get out of it. The climber Andrew returned to the village from which he started in the beginning, and he is now no longer a climber. Countless years have passed since his start, that day when the old man who had died years ago spoke to him. Andrew advances further back to the village, covering his face and hearing only his steps and the strong winds. He is afraid, terrified, and in need of help. The sun began to rise and began to get closer to the village and its inhabitants as they began their day. They never expected that this morning something approaches them, something long and elongated, emaciated and pale, hairless, advances towards them, and makes a moaning sound, as if it were crying. The villagers had never seen anything like this before. It's like something out of this world. He saw the inhabitants. He thought they would help him, and when he revealed his face and saw their eyes as they looked at him, he saw in them nothing but the bulging eyes that he saw in the king's eyes testified. The same eyes and looks that Andrew thought he had escaped from. Eyes and looks that meant nothing to Andrew but pain, torture, and madness. And even when Andrew covered his face with his hands, he still saw those eyes staring at him. Andrew thought, is he still in the mountain? Did he survive all that? Is it just an illusion? Is he still under the influence of the Mountain King? Is it all just an illusion created by the king? And a question rang in his head. What did Andrew do to live this hell? Is all this just the result of him having a dream of reaching the top of a fucking mountain? Did all this make him worth all this eternal torment? Andrew's emotions began to change from all of these to feelings of outrage and utter rage, the kind of outrage that soon led to the inevitable result, violence. Andrew screams a blood-curdling scream. The residents also scream in terror, and then the carnage begins. The thing that was once a climber began to tear apart the inhabitants who looked at it without any mercy. Even those who fled still felt their eyes looking at it. They must be eliminated quickly, and no one must be left among them. This is the only way for him. He feels again comfort and humiliation, and what appears to be a serial episode happened. The sound of the massacre aroused the dismay of other residents in the village, which made them come out of their homes, see what is happening, which means looking at what Andrew has become. This massacre happens, and seeing a face without them, having the awareness that this is a sentence for them to die in less than an hour. The village has become devoid of any life, in which there is only the thing Andrew once became. Andrew Irvine was a climber, is now an absolute thing. Strength fills him with feelings of loneliness, terror and sadness. The thing that would later become 096 covers his face with his outstretched hands, weeping and groaning.